One moment.
Yes, ma'am.
If I may have 1 moment. Your
Yes,
Honor.
ma'am.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Ms. Wolfson.
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Rower, that night when you all left the gas station, did you see any car following you from the scene?
No.
And when you got back to the hotel, did you know where the defendant went when he took Charlie out?
No.
Back at the hotel, were you paying attention to the defendant the whole time?
No.
The next morning, when you said you wanted to go home, were you stomping your feet?
No.
Were you demanding to go home?
No.
Did you just say, I want to go home?
Yes.
When you were meeting with the detectives, that's Detective Musser and Detective Oliver, and you thought and feared that you may be getting arrested, did that fear cause you to lie?
No.
Did that fear cause you to exaggerate anything?
No.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Your Honor, maybe you can.
Yes, ma'am. Call to order. Version, please. Oh, you're getting lined up.
Jurors entering the courtroom.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You can resume your seats. Ms. Wolfson?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, and she's subject to recall.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Rauer. You can step down. State's next witness.
Sukon Ward.
Sukon Wharf, please. Ma'am, if you'll come to the front for me. And if you raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath to you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
All right, ma'am, if you'll come right over this way for me and have a seat. And if you adjust that mic, yes, ma'am, you can just adjust that. Be sure and speak directly into it so everybody can hear you. Mr. Guy.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you please tell the members of the jury your name.
My name is Sukhan Wharf, that's spelled Sukhan, Wharf, Warf.
And Ms. Wharf, where are you employed?
I work for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the biology section. We have a lab right here in Jacksonville
How long have you been with FDLE?
for 12 years.
And your official title is what?
Crime laboratory analyst for the biology section.
And what are your duties and responsibilities as a crime laboratory analyst in the biology DNA section?
I take in items of evidence and screen them for their potential use for the DNA testing process, and I also perform the DNA tests on those items.
And how long have you worked in that section?
For 12 years.
What is forensic serology?
Forensic serology is the study of bodily fluids as it pertains to criminal cases.
And you do conduct DNA testing?
Yes.
What type of DNA testing do you conduct?
The particular type of DNA test that I conduct is called STR, or short tandem repeat DNA testing.
And how long have you been conducting the STR DNA testing?
I've been doing it independently for over 9 years.
Briefly summarize your educational background for the members of the jury, please.
I have a bachelor's in biology, Bachelor of Science degree from the University of North Florida, and then I went on to obtain my master's in forensic DNA and serology from the University of Florida.
Did you also receive training within FDLE to prepare you for your duties as a forensic serologist and DNA analyst?
Yes, I did. FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, has a very in-depth training program, and the total length of my entire training was approximately a year long.
Your Honor, we would stipulate to this witness's credentials and to her admission as an expert witness.
Mr. Guy?
I was just about there. Yes, sir.
Do you want to jump ahead and be there?
Yes, sir. That's
All
fine.
right, then, ladies and gentlemen, this witness will be declared to be an expert in the field that she's just described. In that regard, her testimony is the same as any other witness, with the exception that she can give her opinion in the area in which she has been declared to be an expert. Mr. Guy.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wolf, what is DNA and how can it be used in a forensic setting?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it is found within most of the cells of your body and makes us who we are. Most of the DNA between individuals is going to be the same because it makes us human, but there is DNA that makes us different, and it's important forensically because it can be used for identification purposes.
And where is DNA found within the human body?
It's found in most of the cells of our bodies, particularly the type of DNA testing I do needs nucleated cells, so cells that have a nucleus, because that's where the type of DNA testing I do is found.
And what is commonly referred to as touch DNA?
Touch DNA is just a term that's used as an attempt to collect DNA from an item that was handled or touched. So with this type of testing, we are just swabbing something to attempt to find skin cells to see if we can obtain a DNA profile from them.
And just because a person touches a surface or object, does it mean that they will leave DNA behind that could be recovered and analyzed?
No, it does not. In fact, a lot of touch DNA samples do not have any DNA results at all.
And how typically are touch DNA samples collected from a surface or object?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How typically are touch DNA samples collected from a surface or object?
The process of collecting a sample for touch is just to swab the item. You'll moisten a swab, a cotton tip swab, looks like a Q-tip, and just rub it onto the surface of the item you're trying to collect any cells from.
Have you had an opportunity to examine evidence in the case of the state of Florida versus Michael Dunn, FDLE number 2012-406772?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Ms. Worf, let me show you what's been marked into evidence as States 197 and ask you first to examine the packaging. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
I recognize this to be a swab from some shell casings.
Is that one that you examined in the connection with this case?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it to be the same?
I recognize it when an item comes into the FDLE laboratory, it's given a FDLE case number and item number, and that would be on this yellow tag that's on the packaging. So I recognize it by the numbers that are present on there, and also when I examine this item, I put my initials on it as well.
Was that exhibit sealed when you received it?
Yes, it was.
And what is contained within the exhibit?
Inside, there's a swab wrapper that contains the swab, which is similar to like a Q-tip, like a cotton tip swab.
All right, and how do you know that that's the same swab that you examined in this case?
I know that this is the item because of the markings that are on the container.
Did you also, is the swab itself in a package?
Yes.
Within the exhibit?
Yes, it is.
Did you write any identifying information on that package?
Yes, I did. Inside, this is just a swab wrapper that the swab came in, and this was opened up, and my initials and case number and exhibit number are also on that inner package. So inside of here is just what's left of the swab that I examined.
All right, and did you examine that exhibit, that is that swab, for the presence of DNA?
Yes, I did.
Can you just briefly explain in layman's terms as much as possible how you went about that?
Well, what I'll do is I'll have a clean area first off, and I will take a cutting from the swab, use a scalpel, put it into a tube, and start the DNA testing process. The DNA testing process is a series of liquid transfers, and the main steps in this are first an extraction, in which I attempt to get the cells off of whatever it's on, in this case the swab material, and then release the DNA from inside of the cells into a solution. Then there's a quantitation step, which tells me about how much DNA I have present in that sample. Then I'll undergo an amplification. It takes any DNA that may be present and will make many copies of it, and at the same time incorporates a dye that allows me to visualize it. And I'll use specialized instrumentation to run that sample, separate it according to size, and visualize it using that dye. And then if there's any DNA present, I will use software to develop that DNA profile.
What did you find when you examined that swab for the presence of DNA?
On this swab, I did not find any DNA.
Does that mean that the surface from which that swab was taken was never touched by human hands or any other part of a human body?
That means that either it wasn't handled or there's just not enough DNA to be detected, which is quite often the case in a lot of DNA touch samples.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, that's all I have.
Ms. Hannah, yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. You said that you work for the Florida Department of... You said that you work for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. You're an analyst that works for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And you said you're in the biology section, is that right?
Yes.
There's a number of other sections that have other specialties, isn't that correct?
That's right.
And you work, as the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, you're a law enforcement agency?
Yes, it is a law enforcement agency.
Okay. And you work directly for other law enforcement agencies or state attorney's offices throughout the state, correct?
I do. I am allowed to have correspondence with, I am allowed to ask questions wherever needed to the detectives that submit things or the state attorney who is prosecuting.
And ma'am, it's fair to say that one of the reasons you were asked about and you described the packaging and the way it was sealed when you got it is because even in what you do, it's important throughout the process to maintain the integrity of evidence that's collected, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. To make sure that what you're processing isn't being tainted or destroyed or lost in some way, correct?
Yes.
And ma'am, you can only process what you're given, is that right?
Yes.
You don't go to a scene to collect anything or to observe the crime scene itself, isn't that right?
No, I don't. There has to be a level of, the lab is really separate from the investigation itself. I don't have any stake in the investigation. I just do my results and report it. So no, I never am that involved in the investigation.
Sure. And if something isn't collected and then submitted to you, then obviously you can't analyze it, correct?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything else? May she be excused?
She may.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take an afternoon break until 3:35, so that'll give you 20 minutes to have a break, and then we will resume. In the meantime, I'll speak to the lawyers about how the rest of the afternoon looks. So don't discuss the case among yourselves. Don't let anybody approach you or anything like that. We'll guard your notes while you're on break. Thank you very much. I see counsel at sidebar without the court report.